Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is a lawyer. However, he lives in the same world as his clients. He's a content creator and entrepreneur who has also helped develop and created his own game, SiegeCaster. Please welcome attorney John Laster of John Laster Law. What's going on, man?
Hey, appreciate you having me here. I'm excited.
I'm excited too, man. This is fun. We've known each other for some time, so I'm glad I got a chance to chat. I think I've always been intrigued by everything that you do and how you do. So, of course, always like to ask the question, what's your go-to lunch or sandwich?
So I'm going to go a little non-traditional on you people because I know you've already gone through most of the big sandwich places. Because, like, again, if we're just talking straight sandwiches, I love, like, Cavo's for a Philly cheesesteak. It's where me and my wife went for Valentine's Day. It was great. A little non-traditional for that, but it was awesome. But then as far as, like, lunch places go, I actually really like the lunch specials over at Pizza. They have, like, a Caesar salad with, like, this pesto sandwich with prosciutto, and it's really freaking good.
That is one of our favorite Caesar salads. That is super good there. Yes. That's awesome.
I
like
one of the best Caesar salads in Orlando.
Yes. And the pizza's good, of course, obviously as well. But yes, the pizza and a little salad, it hits the spot. So, John, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of have you on, because I think I'm very intrigued by the aspect that I want to know a little bit about how you went from writing video game reviews in high school to then how it evolved to you becoming a content creator, to then doing game development, to then also becoming a lawyer, now representing and kind of covering all these things.
At the end of the day, it kind of comes back to I was a little too addicted to Halo 2, and I worked in a call center. So I had nothing to do during the call center time except for making phone calls, and half the time people aren't picking up. So you're like, all right, while I'm calling people, I'm going to start just typing on a forum or something. And I eventually started just writing game reviews on a forum. And this guy kind of reached out to me. He's like, hey, you're pretty good at this. Can I give you free games to do that? I was like, cool. And unbeknownst to me at the time, that guy sold that website to this other group of people. And they're like, holy crap, you're really good at this. Can we pay you real money to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a high school kid. You already given me $20 or $60 games, which to me back then was like gold because I couldn't afford much. I was getting, one game for birthday, one game for Christmas. And then maybe if I saved up a little bit, I could buy something occasionally. But, I was making like $6 an hour back then. It wasn't like it is today necessarily, though that may have gone a little further back then too, but like, these guys started paying me to write about games. I got thrilled because I was like, this is awesome. And then they were like, you're pretty good at this. Can we pay you to edit? And I'm like, yeah, I'll edit other people. And then they're like, you're really good at that. Can you manage the whole thing? And I eventually kind of managed the whole website. We were one of the first sites that was kind of taking indie games super seriously back at the time. And, then the financial crisis happened. Basically all advertising money in the entire world bled dry in 2008. So there was no money all of a sudden for most of that. So that website kind of went under, unfortunately. But the good news is kind of out of the ashes, I started my own thing called XBLA Fans. Again, we were covering Xbox Live Arcade games. It was like kind of the precursor in a lot of ways to Steam, which kind of now kind of takes the mantle of like King of the Indies. And, from there, started streaming, became a Twitch partner. I covered indie games a lot. And honestly, I just learned really quickly that all my content creator friends didn't have a lawyer or kind of hated their lawyer. Or at best, maybe it was their uncle who, did some family law, but like really didn't know anything about video games. It was probably like, I can read a contract because like, they can. But like at the same time, it's like, well, it's not the best person to have reading it, but it's still better than nothing, And I learned pretty quickly, like, there was a huge blind spot between both the indie devs and the content creators. Because again, if you're an indie dev showing up to a meeting with Microsoft has 3 to 4 lawyers on their side on any given deal. It's like, hopefully you have one, and people were asking me questions when I was in law school. And I was just always like, hey guys, I'm a law student. I'm not answering these because I'm not trying to get in trouble. But at the same time, I was learning really quickly that there was just a huge gap in the market right there. And again, I think people just want lawyers that feel like they're part of their own community and not like, just in it to make money off whoever they can make money off,
Yeah. At what point did you go the route of saying, from you having the website and then going to law school, like where in between all of that did you say, hey, I think I want to create my own game and create SiegeCaster? And then we'll go with that, and then I'll ask more.
Yeah,
I'll do some follow-ups.
To be honest, right when I graduated law school, I was kind of hoping to work directly at a game studio instead of law, because at the time I was slightly burned out on law. And again, I had this kind of content creator background, marketing background, kind of biz dev kind of background. I was like, oh man, I'd love to go do that at a game studio. And at the time, it just wasn't necessarily in the cards because it just wasn't the right market for that at the right time. And I wasn't like as experienced as I am now. But then, things kind of fell in place. I started talking to a friend of mine who I'd met at GDC a few years prior. And, we hadn't talked in honestly maybe 8 years or so, but we just started talking about our philosophy on game design and we just started a company from there, and it was just like the right time, right opportunity.
So tell people what SiegeCaster, like, how did the game come to life and what is it? Like,
Yeah,
give me the
like
fun
all
video
good games
version
are pretty
of
much started with a napkin and a spreadsheet. Because like when we were first coming up with ideas, we had a bunch of old like these arcade games that we all loved. And we were like, why are these not around anymore? Because like the reality of video games right now is it's such a hit driven industry. It's very difficult to get some attention in the market anymore because there's so many different companies and so many things launching content. And if you were to go talk to a big company like a Microsoft, even, they probably wouldn't even say that the gaming companies are their biggest competitors. They'd probably be bringing up Netflix and Apple and all the other, kind of media companies out there that are trying to vie for everybody's attention anymore. So we were just trying to figure out, like, why did some of these games that we considered classics kind of disappear? And we kind of fixated on one, to be honest, called Rampart that we just really liked. That kind of eventually evolved into what I would call like traditional RTS and like traditional tower defense. So it kind of like was the precursor in a lot of ways to both of those genres. And if you go all the way back, it kind of forked in two different directions. And we were just kind of like, well, what would happen if it forked a little bit differently? And that's kind of where SiegeCaster came from, is kind of trying to take down this concept of, instead of like passive tower defense where you put down your little turrets and they kind of kill everything for you, what if it was more active and you were kind of this magical wizard controlling a castle and like really needing to kind of cast spells to, keep everything at bay?
How long did it take you from the time you drew it up on a napkin in Excel to actually seeing it to actually play out to like production for people to actually be able?
Massive credit to our programmer because he had a playable prototype, I want to say within a month, where at least we could like validate that, like, would this idea be fun? Like the art on that playable prototype is absolutely awful. Again, he's a programmer, not an artist. He did great with placeholders, but if I showed that one to anybody right now, they'd have a hard time imagining it's the same game. So pretty much from then until August, until we probably had what I'd call like a full vertical slice, meaning we have like, this is what a level or two should look like in the play like. And then from August until almost May, until we pretty much had like a fully launchable game, so to speak. And again, like there was a lot of work that goes into that. Having done it now, I genuinely understand when people say it's almost like magic that anything ever launches, because any creative project is just difficult with multiple people, different opinions. Everybody who play tests it wants something different. And you just really have to kind of go back to kind of like, what are your kind of North Stars on the project? And there's some things that I definitely know we'd love to do to the game, and some stuff we'd love to do if we get the opportunity to make a second one. And we're just really looking forward to continuing kind of along this journey.
So many independent games and stuff like that. Where can people play it now? It's a PC game, right?
Right now it's a PC game. It's out on Steam. And I would say that's honestly one of the most difficult things about launching a game. And I mean, it's funny because from an academic stance, I used to tell all my clients, I'm like, it doesn't matter if you have the world's best bed and breakfast, it still has to have a highway exit. And the reality is, like, that's definitely one of the things we struggled with a little bit with SiegeCaster. But SiegeCaster was also really, really validating and kind of proved that we could launch a game. And even from that perspective, it's been incredibly rewarding personally, just from even just a marketing angle for the law firm, just that so many indie devs I've talked to have just immediately been impressed or surprised that A, I would even try to do something like that, and B, that we were able to pull it off. And I don't think that would have been possible without my business partner on the project. His name's Alexander Zawinski, and he was a COO over at Bithell Games for the last like almost 10 years or so. So again, having somebody who'd been in the trenches of game development before was huge, because again, I'm coming in with a lot of, content creator experience, gameplay experience. I mean, one of the posters that you can't really see very clearly behind me happens to be a signed poster from Toy Soldiers. So again, it's a kind of similar game within the genre in a sense. Obviously, much more fancy because they were a much larger team with a much larger budget. But again, it's kind of that active tower defense concept. So like these kind of games have always been something I've been really driven toward, whether it's like a Orcs Must Die or a Trenched or anything of that type. There's so many good games in that kind of genre, or Dungeon Defenders, which happens to be a client of mine.
I think what I find interesting is the fact that your clients are like, oh wow, you've created a game, because like that's not something you typically will see from your legal team or your lawyer.
Well, I mean,
so
it helps when you have a job that's not very busy and nobody ever expects anything from you, and you just have no deadlines. Like that was,
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest surprise, was everyone was like, when did you have time? And that's the reality of it, is like it's very difficult. And I mean, credit to my wife for putting up with some of the sacrifices I'm sure she had to make, from the fact that, like, again, there was a period where pretty much nights and weekends I was spending a lot of time on this project. And again, especially as we're leading into launch, like there were days that I was in here, after she went to bed, just play testing, and doing various things like that and trying to give feedback and everything along that line. And again, we didn't get the balance on the game perfect. There's a lot of things that I would have loved to have fixed with the progression systems and things. There's definitely a lot of room for growth, both of that game or, even a future sequel. So I'm hoping we get to kind of revisit it eventually.
That it's super exciting. Now, how do you balance that aspect of it? I would say the job that pays the bills,
Yeah.
and does the legal practice. How much does it help having the background, and then also kind of marketing that aspect to it?
I think it's been beneficial from both angles. I think I'm doing better, I think, on the game because of my background with law, because again, I have a unique perspective as a lawyer where I get to work with maybe 100 different businesses in any given month. And I get to hear about pretty much all their wins and all their losses. Because typically, if you think about it, when do you talk to your lawyer? Something either really good happened or something really bad happened. So I'm hearing pretty much all your big highlights and lowlights, So I get to kind of like learn from all those different businesses, because one of the best teachers is experience. And it's even better when you can learn from other people's mistakes, in a sense, because you get to kind of learn, okay, we've had this event now happen 7 times. How did we fix it, and which outcome was the best? It's that whole like Doctor Strange moment where you like can, see all the different future angles. And it's just like, it really makes you a lot stronger as an entrepreneur, the more at bats you've been able to take. And like, that's just something really important. And then from the law firm perspective, honestly, one of the things I have to remind a lot of clients is some of the best fixes for contract are not necessarily legal fixes. You have to be thinking about the different business angles that you can, angle something or place something as well. And now, having gone through the process and feeling all the pain points of having to basically do all of this internally, you really realize where there's holes in the market and where there's, again, maybe even potential for bad actors within a contract or something that aren't necessarily something that legal would catch as easily, because again, like you just really have to kind of like plan for it. Like, I remember at one point we had a artist just message us and be like, hey, I'm late on a bunch of deliveries, but like I got distracted with Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments and stuff. And it's just like, okay, well, he's in, South America. What am I going to do about this? Like I can threaten him on a contract, but that's not going to do anything. So like, what good is that? So like, how do you figure out the best way to work with even like international talent as we start to really become a more globalized market, especially as you just notice like economies of scale?
It's crazy. It's crazy to think, especially as it goes, and like you said, especially when you're dealing with content creators. I want to bring it down, obviously, down to like more of a smaller business aspect of it, because I know it is something that you kind of handle. You handle large and small, which is great. What do you think are some of the biggest legal mistakes you see small business owners, content creators make early on?
One of the biggest mistakes is just not understanding that even if the contract value is small, it has the same potential legal implications as a big contract. And what I mean by that is the amount of times that I have seen someone sign now they're ChatGPT contracts, but back in the day, they were, hacked together by one of the business partners. It may or may not have said everything it needed to say. And it may have been completely one-sided. Like, I remember one of the first like content creator deals I had to get someone out of, like he got pretty hosed, and it was just like trying to fix the situation for him. And again, the problem is a contract's a contract on some level. Like it takes going to court and something to get it set aside. So unless you have a lot of money there, you're probably not going to do that. And that's one of those awkward things that a lot of people don't talk about, is just that there is room for bad actors within a certain dollar range, because the problem is they don't necessarily bring those contracts to their lawyers because they kind of try to self-do them, you know? So like just not understanding fully that like the implications of a small deal can have drastic impacts on blocking you from a future big deal. That's one of the biggest problems. And then, you know, beyond that, like that's just, it's life as an entrepreneur. Everything's on fire all the time, whichever analogy you want to use, whether you want to use the glass balls and rubber balls one, you have to let some things drop. You can't do everything. So occasionally you have to cut corners somewhere. So it's just like trying to figure out and learn and get good at understanding which balls are, you know, rubber and which ones are glass. Because you got to catch the glass ones. And yes, the rubber ones can hit the ground. Hopefully they'll bounce up right. But like, it's definitely tricky. And that's one of the things I think small business owners oftentimes just don't know yet, because again, you haven't been through it yet. And until you've been through it, it's really difficult to have a good feel for that stuff. And that's where it's like talking to other small business owners, talking to legal advisors, talking to your accountant. Definitely talk to your accountant. There's a huge difference between an accountant who rubber stamps whatever you give them for your books and just files your taxes. That's called TurboTax, whether it's a person or not. You want somebody who's actually going to talk to you and give you some legitimate advice about how you do what you're doing. If your accountant isn't occasionally giving you some feedback or asking you questions, you probably need another one, you know? And I mean, it's very similar even with your lawyers. Like the best situations you can get in is having a lawyer who genuinely understands your business, because you're going to have a much better relationship with that person. You're going to be less scared to talk to them, and you're going to get better feedback.
I agree with that. Do you have advice? Let's say a brand or someone who has like wants to protect like their particular brand, their content, their IP. Mm-hmm. Is there a way? And obviously the answer obviously will be like get a lawyer. But my question would be: is there like what's your advice on, without spending like a fortune on it? What are some like possible ways that someone can kind of protect themselves when it comes to their brand, their content, their IP, when it comes to something that they're creating?
That's a really tricky one, because like you said, like the immediate answer is obviously the best thing you can do is talk to somebody who's a professional. And again, all this information, it's information purposes, does not mean I'm your lawyer. All the standard disclaimers that I'm supposed to tell you at the beginning of this. But again, like obviously learning the difference between what a patent is, a trademark is, and a copyright is huge, you know? I always tell people kind of flip the words a little bit. Like copyright blocks people from having the right to copy your work. Trademark is how you mark your goods in trade. If you just flip it, it's really easy to remember what they do. I don't know why I've never had a law firm or law school professor say that, because I'm like, to me, I think it's just super clear immediately what they do. And a lot of people still get them confused, because I get asked all the time for, I want to patent this logo or something. And I'm always just like, all right, we'll start on phase one, because I know we need to, you know? And again, things like trademarks and stuff, it's like, or even, you know, forming an LLC, for example, within the state of Florida, forming an LLC is actually relatively easy. However, there's still a lot of things you can mess up. One example of that is especially for content creators, and this is something we tell every content creator we work with: your address may be public record. In the state of Florida, we can replace the word may with will. You will be public record. So do you really want your house on Sunbiz, especially if you're a big content creator and you named your LLC Big Content Creator LLC, which makes it abundantly clear how to look you up? Some of my clients, they use LLC names that don't really have anything to do with their creator name. Some of my clients intentionally use things like virtual mailboxes or co-working spaces to, you know, kind of work out of, just so that they don't have to deal with the public facing stuff like that. And again, that's a perfect example of something that is relatively simple to do as a business owner, but again, has long lasting implications. You can go look up the first LLC I filed when I was 16 for my writing stuff back in the day, because I had an uncle who knew enough to tell me, hey, you should probably have an LLC. But again, my parents' address is on it from back then, because we didn't know together. And again, I didn't have somebody who was telling me, hey, that's going to be public record for all of eternity. My parents have since moved, so it's not like you can find us there, but still, that was on Sunbiz for forever, and it doesn't go away.
That's nuts that you say that. And not something I even thought of when you're thinking about those things. What about I just always curious because I've always heard this, so I kind of want you to debunk this. I've heard some things where like you're like, hey, if you have a design, if you put it in an envelope and you mail it to yourself, like is that the theory?
Where that comes from is the idea of just being able to show that you have proof that this existed back then. Because technically the rule is, if something is copywritten, technically the moment it's a fixed medium and it's been created. However, it doesn't mean it's a registered copyright. There's a huge difference between like common law trademark and registered trademark. Common law, concept of this is a copyrighted work versus like this is a registered copyrighted work. So again, for you to enforce things, you have to register them. You have to go through the copyright office. And again, there's a huge difference between, a lot of what you hear on the internet and, what's reality. And I always tell people to just think about, who the source is sometimes, because again, a lot of times you'll see some really funny things on TikTok and you're like, I know this probably isn't true, but like, I wish it was, because you'll see stuff all the time about how you can, write off a full car or something, and then you talk to your accountant, he's like, no, there's a huge difference between what the IRS considers ordinary and necessary, and again, TikTok content creator logic that if it's in a video, it was a write-off, and it's like, no, that's not exactly how it works.
So I wanted to ask you, being a lawyer, people obviously have certain ideas or facades. Is there, I kind of want you to be able to kind of either debunk a myth or give, like they give, things that people give, whatever, like the stereotypical things of give lawyers a bad name. I kind of want you to give you a floor to kind of debunk anything or kind of be like, maybe like, hey, consider this, or if you didn't think of this type of thing to kind of help, change on what people consider, especially when it comes to a lawyer. Because I know lawyers can be scary, but you obviously are not.
I definitely think the idea that lawyers can be scary is a very true one. And that's not really a myth because, again, there's kind of a mystique around the job. And that's one of the things I always try to debunk a little bit. And I mean, some of what I'll do is I just don't even wear a suit when I go out networking or talking to people, which is very non-traditional for a lawyer. My wife's joke, she's only seen me in a suit twice. And I think one was I got one into the bar and one was we got married, So it's literally like, it's not like I've, worn one frequently. Because again, traditionally, I don't go to court. I always joke with my clients, the only people who win in court are lawyers. My goal is to keep you out of it. My goal is to be somewhat friendly and be able to help you solve your problems. Because again, if you're too scared to talk to me about your problems, then I'm not going to be able to help you. And again, I think that's one of the things that I think is a myth, is that people are just like, well, lawyers are just there to, bill you a ton of money and they don't even care about what you're doing. And it's like, well, then you have the wrong lawyer. It's just like any other industry. There are good ones and there are bad ones. There are good waiters and there are bad waiters. There are, good mechanics and bad mechanics. And I think for me, the mechanic is one of the like most easy things to compare it to as like far as like a hiring process. Because I'll be honest, if you tell me a bunch of fancy buzzwords and say it's going to cost me a certain price, I have two options. I either take you at your word or I Google and see if they make sense. And the reality is you always assume as a lawyer that that's what everyone's going to do to you. I'm going to tell you a couple things. I'm going to tell you some pricing, some ranges, blah, blah, blah. But especially with ChatGPT and, Google before that, where people are going to immediately go after. So realistically, you're probably already in line with what, quote unquote, the market will bear there, from an economics perspective. So again, like, it's just finding someone you vibe with who can relate to you is really, really key. Because again, like I have a mechanic I've been using for forever because again, I find them very trustworthy. There's multiple times they've come in and told me, hey, we don't need to fix that. Here's this, and like, again, like stuff like that is some of the easiest ways to figure out if somebody's kind of on your side is it's like, well, do they always try to upsell you on everything? Or are they occasionally like, hey, you probably don't need that thing you just asked for. Like I could do it if you want, but like, here's a more effective or efficient or cheaper way to do that. Or occasionally I'll even tell a client like, hey, you probably don't need me to file that one. That one's actually pretty simple to go do yourself. There's certain things though that I would always tell clients, please don't try to do that on your own because it's difficult, and trademarks is always one of those.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I wanted to chat with you because one of the things, and obviously it's funny that you said trademark because I am John is my, I will preface this. John is my lawyer. He just recently, I've known him for a long time. He's helped me in the past where I've had things happen, and ironically, he's very upfront, and that's one of the things, that reason why I wanted to came back to him, because I had something that came up and I asked him for assistance, and he's like, hey, I know someone who actually can help you could help you possibly a little better. And I basically, and it worked out. And then when the time came again, and I needed someone to kind of help me with, knowing as I grown as a business that I kind of needed to protect myself, I knew John would be the one that I would reach out to. So, which I appreciate. But one of the things that when we were talking that caught my attention was, so you moved your office, you're located in Winter Park, Florida. And when you moved your office, you also, like, your office is not your traditional, again, kind of going with the idea that you're not the traditional idea of like you think of a law firm type of thing.
We have a really favorable rent situation at the moment. And again, we're trying to kind of pass that along to the game community themselves, because like, again, my goal is to basically create a place that we can kind of help incubate some talent or grow some talent. And again, I don't use that word in the sense of I'm trying to run some kind of formal incubator or something. It's more of just like, I want to talk to anybody who's doing anything cool in gaming. I want you to know me. I want you to know other people within Orlando that I can introduce you to, because I think in general, there's a lot more that's possible when you have some level of spontaneous, like, conversations and just ideas bounce back and forth. And like, again, just as an entrepreneur, it can be very tiring to be doing this alone. So being able to occasionally have other people that you can talk to who, again, going back to the kind of thing we said earlier, having more reps on certain outcomes is just always huge. So like, even if you can't get them yourself, you can talk to 4 other people and find out that 3 of them have been in the same spot you are currently, and they might have some advice for you. That's always great. So for me, I wanted to kind of try to figure out something where, again, like, I can put my game company in there. There's another company in there called Bad Guys Studios that does some of the most crazy live streaming stuff I've ever seen. Like, he's T-Pain with Formula Drift, like, live streaming. Like, that's just crazy. He's live streaming from a car, basically. It's like, it's unique and it's cool. And there's like all these cool things happening in Orlando. And again, we have the luxury of having really good game development schools like Full Sail, like UCF, like FIA, that again are trying to prop up the game community a little bit. And it makes it really beneficial that we can kind of be in such a good place. Because like, for the past, I don't know, I want to say 5 or 6 years, my office was like downtown. But the problem was always just like, getting people to come visit you is hard with parking. Because again, nobody wants to pay for a parking garage when, it's like, even if I told you like, hey, Biggie, come work out of my office for a day, just so you can get out of the house for a little bit, you're going to be like, $16 a day for parking? That's a lot, Because again, small businesses are tough, especially when you're dealing with students, And one of the groups that I'm always trying to help out a little bit with is some of the student groups. Because again, I wish there'd been more happening when I graduated, within kind of the game dev scene that was a little more public. And again, it's always difficult because, again, getting the executives to show up to certain things is tricky. Getting the professional game devs to show up is a little tricky. Getting the amateur hobbyists to show up and then getting the students to show up. Like, it's different groups will bring different people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like, it's definitely difficult to get all of them kind of talking to each other at the same time. One of the nice things I have is I'm kind of, like I said, I don't do a lot of litigation work to begin with. So being more transactional, I can kind of be a little more like Switzerland, where it's like, hey, if you need help, I've got good cheese, and we'll hang out.
I think it's so cool that like the fact that you're like, hey, I got the space. I can. This is something that I'm interested in, and I could help. Be able to provide you with some form of space, and at the same time, help you create like a little hub. So I think I just found that to be so interesting when you said that. I was like, really? I was like, very, very cool to be able to see that. I always like to ask my guests. I have a few certain things I like to ask my guests. One of them is, lately I've been asking a lot of them to put things out into the universe. So I want to ask you, and obviously you can use this in the game development world. You can. I'm gonna make it open ended. What is it that you want to put into the universe, John?
So for one thing, I do want to work on another game, whether it's a sequel or something else. I do want to get another game out there. I want to continue trying to grow that. I want to help form a couple new game studios within the next 5 years for sure. I want to find some more people who are like, hey, I'm entrepreneurial. I've got kind of a Swiss Army knife skill set where, I can program, I can do a little bit of art, do a little bit of this. If I need some help on the business side, I'm like, those are people I want to meet. And then because I remember at my birthday, someone asked me, like, what are the things you're most proud of this year? And looking back, I was like, damn it, those were all work related. I also want to go to Japan at some point with my wife because I think that's important too, is to not be completely focused only on the work stuff because it's really easy to like hyper fixate on like what you want to accomplish there because those are like goals and achievements. But it's like, I also want to do fun shit with like people who matter to me. And like, that's important too, is like, I want to go over there and just see all the random Pokemon stuff. I want to eat all the cool sushi. I just want to have a good time and explore another culture because like, that's awesome to me. And like, again, that's something I want to do. But like, we always put stuff like that off. And it's just like, sometimes you just got to be like, all right, let's just start saving and do it.
I'm with you 100% on that. I love that. Besides gaming, what else do you do for fun? Like what other fun things that you do for like on the when you're not working or or doing the game development or playing games? What else are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that eats a lot of my time. I collect a lot of Pokemon cards. Me and my wife go to a lot of concerts. We just went to one in downtown Orlando on Valentine's Day. Saw Matt Korecki's. That was cool. And again, like I like to cook too. So like, honestly, I'm doing a lot of that stuff. And then like this year, I'm trying to be a little bit better about my health too. And like try to actually be a little bit more active and try to focus on that, which is, like, again, when you're already like, all right, we're at 20 something hours in the day. Where are we going to fit that one? We'll find it, because the reality is there's always some time you're just goofing off on TikTok or something that you really cut if you're a little bit more intentional about planning your day out, So it's just making everything a priority.
I love that. What advice do you have for someone wanting to start something?
Definitely talk to people who've done it and talk to professionals who can help you. Like that's some of the best stuff, but also just remember that any feedback you get, especially from a business owner who's done it, is going to be slightly jaded with their story. So like kind of understanding like where you might differ from them too, and just trying to figure out like what is the best piece of information I could really glean from what they're telling me. Because like, sometimes you'll hear some stuff and you'll be like, I don't know that like their journey is going to be the same as what I'm trying to do. So you also need to like really learn like what to kind of take in and what to consume and what to kind of let go past, and also compartmentalize and not like, you can't constantly, be thinking about all the different opportunities you didn't take or the things that didn't go right. You got to really be able to understand that, like, especially this is hard for people who were like good students in school and stuff, but you got to learn that failure is a good thing. Like failure means you're doing something different that nobody else has probably done, and you're getting some market validation on your idea. But if you just go out and do something that everybody's already done, you're probably not taking enough risk or chances, So like you're going to get beat up occasionally, and you just got to be able to roll with the punches too. So I know that was kind of a meandering answer, but like,
No.
Definitely stuff I would think about.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like how it encompasses everything, because it is something that you kind of all deal with when you're trying to start anything new. When you started, when you started with your practice, I'm always intrigued by the fact or when I see people that are doing something that are not outside of the norm. How many people were like, oh yeah, John, I could totally see you. This is like the field or where you want to represent like law. Or did you get some people are like, are you crazy? Like, why are you doing, like, why are you
90% of the people that I dealt with were like, why are you swimming upstream? Especially like the law school itself. They were very much like, hey man, just go get a big law job. Just go do something more traditional. Like, why are you really trying to do something weird, And I'm cognizant of the fact that, like, again, there were some really good people who kind of, gave me good opportunities and kind of, stuck their neck out for me. Because, like, again, one of my first clients was, ironically enough, the sushi place that was next to the coffee shop I studied for the bar in. They hired me the day after I passed the bar. They were just like, hey, we need help reading this. I'm like, cool, let's do it. And then like one of my first big venture deals came from my old contact at Microsoft. When he left to go do some sports card work, he gave me an opportunity that, to be honest, without that opportunity, I probably wouldn't be where I am. Because again, I got a lot of credibility immediately just for him vouching for me. That again let me do a lot of work that would have been harder to get your hands on as a solo practitioner without kind of being down that path. So again, I've gotten to do a lot of cool stuff that way. But I would definitely say there were a lot of people who are like, why are you swimming upstream? Why are you making it harder for yourself? Just go be a lawyer. And then like, if you want to do the game stuff, just do the game stuff for fun later, you know? And again, it was tricky because even when I wanted to talk to some game studios about the idea of, you know, potentially working for them, even before I decided to do the law stuff, it was kind of like, well, what are you an expert at? And the reality is like within small businesses, you don't need hyper specialized experts. And that's some of the weird part with like the way the industry is for like training people for jobs and stuff. But like one of the reasons why I think a lot of people who are entrepreneurial end up being entrepreneurial is they got beat up and told they didn't fit into a, you know, normal peg the other way. So they're like, well, I'm just going to go build my own pegboard, you know? And it's just like, it makes it a lot more interesting, you know, because like you get to kind of see a lot of different things that you wouldn't get to see otherwise. And like, if I'd gone the traditional like big law route, I would have been doing document review for multiple years, barely getting to see some of the stuff I got to see. Whereas like within my first year, I was doing some ridiculous different things in a wide range of just issues where it's just like one day I wake up and I'm fixing ADA compliance for an arcade. The next day I'm like, you know, writing complex, you know, terms of services and privacy policies and stuff. And it's again, it's, you have to know, you know how to do all the stuff you're doing, but like, you can learn a lot of it. And like, again, it's just figuring the market out. I had the benefit of knowing the industry really well prior to kind of doing a lot of this, which made, once I knew the law well, I was like, okay, I'm now pretty dangerous, you know, in a good way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's the part, I mean, that's the part that I love is the fact that you decided to do something. It's always about like doing something that you're passionate about and that you love. And it's kind of like, and at the same time, it's niche. It's like there's not many out there that do these type of things. And the fact that you already have all those experiences, you know, doing it as either a content creator.
Is again, the fact that I hung a shingle that just immediately made me easy to understand. Because again, yeah, a lot of lawyers get confused when I tell them what I do. Because they'll just be like, oh, so you do corporate intellectual property and entertainment. I'm like, yeah, kind of. But like, again, like most of what I do is I'm kind of like fractional general counsel for a lot of, you know, content creators and, game companies and game adjacent technologies and things like that. Like I worked with a company called Loop for forever and they did a lot of sports card breaking. And that was super fun for me. Because again, I got to tie into a bunch of different passions of mine. Because like I've got Pokemon cards just sitting on my desk right now. You know, like I'm probably at any given time, there's probably at least 50 cards of some type. You know, whether it's a sports card or something. And this is actually the business card the designer over at Loop made me. It happens to be a Craig Maddox rookie card with my face on it.
Okay, so I need to ask then, collection wise, then do you have like what? Because you obviously seem to be a collector. Are you more of a card collector then, or you pretty much collect a little bit of everything?
I would say right now it's mostly in Pokemon cards, but yeah, like I mean, over the years I've collected a bunch of random stuff. I'm sure, you know, back in college I still have all the DVDs and stuff back then I used to buy. I still have a lot of controllers. I've got, you know, like right behind me, there's some stuff that like maybe hard to see, but like there's a custom, you know, Xbox controller right there. Some other random stuff up there. So again, like I'm always trying to just surround myself around passions I like. And again, one thing I've noticed is just having stuff like that that's a little more eclectic behind you. You'd be amazed how many conversations it starts and how often it really leads to people seeing you as more of a human and less of a scary lawyer type. Because immediately there's something that almost anybody can look behind me and be like, that's interesting. Whether it's the Dr. Seuss book. Normally it's a Rick.
I did see the Dr. Seuss book. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. About the Dr. Seuss book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my dad actually gave that to me when I graduated high school. It's all the places you'll go.
Yes, and I know. We gave
not known for writing in a lot of objects, you know, whether it be birthday cards or anything else. And I know that's one he wrote in a pretty good bit. So I've always kept that back there.
I love it. I love it. Where can people follow you? Where can they play the game SiegeCaster? And then what if they need to contact you because they need a lawyer?
Yeah, so let's start with, you can play SiegeCaster by going to Steam. It's a really unique game, in my opinion, where we tried to kind of modernize kind of an arcade classic and kind of mix it with some more modern games like a Vampire Survivors kind of thing. It's definitely difficult. So if you don't like hard games, I'm just going to warn you now. It's probably not your thing. But at the same time, if you like a good challenge, there's a lot of good things going for it. And again, I'm excited to hopefully get to revisit it at some point. And then as far as kind of following me, I'm easy to reach, whether it's on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter or Blue Sky. I think I sent you some of those you can put in the show notes. And then
I will.
The best way to reach me is probably either through my website. I think I have my email and my phone number on there, as well as a contact form. One of the nice things about me is I'm pretty easy to reach typically. And that's definitely something I've always tried to be, really cognizant about. Is one of the biggest pain points a lot of people have is like just not being able to hear back from their lawyer. So again, I always try to, within reason, obviously, because again, you still have to like carve out time for yourself and for your family. Like I had a client yesterday message me at midnight on a federal holiday asking about something, and I'm like, get back to you tomorrow. Like we're
yeah. How many levels are on SiegeCaster?
Oh God, I think it's 12.
Okay.
I should know that answer, but it's been a little bit since I played it now. And again, like if I'm being honest, I think the first 3 levels are really good. And then I think after that, you either understand the game mechanics really well or you don't. And if you understand the game mechanics really well, you're going to crush the next 9 or so levels. And if you don't understand the game mechanics, you just kind of skirted by and maybe beat the first 3. Unfortunately, there's not enough in there progression wise to like catch you up to the people who kind of really understood what we were doing. Cause like, it's a unique game that I don't think has been done before. And I think that meant that like some of it is just kind of hard to understand. If I went back to it, I definitely would want to really revisit a lot of those aspects and make it a little bit better.
The reason I was curious of that was because in my reviews, I was like reading and stuff and watching. I was like watching other people's reviews, and one person did say that was a big one. So I was glad to hear you say the fact that it is a hard game because it's like because it's like everything happens so fast is what I kept reading about.
It's so chaotic, and that was somewhat intentional because we wanted you to feel like this powerful castle and wizard that needed to like build. So like if I was going to say there's one thing that I wish people kind of grasp, it's that you need to build early and often and really hyper focus on building out. A lot of people play a little too defensively where they'll start trying to like add extra walls around the main base. And I'm like, no, you got to econ hard. You got to go capture those different rune spires. You got to get the different upgrades. Like the more you build out, the more powerful you get. And like, if you were to watch me play versus, again, somebody else, again, not a fair comparison because I played over 120 hours of testing. I'm probably like almost too aware of how to play at this point where like we have to remember that like, I personally thought I'd be somewhere in like the 70th, 80th percentile of players. I think I'm probably closer to 95, which I wasn't expecting. But like, again, like it's a tricky game. There's a lot going on. And one of the things I think stresses a lot of people out is you die a lot because again, like it's kind of like starting a small business in a lot of ways. Like you got to get used to failure and kind of learning from it. And the problem is that's not what people want to hear. They want to, one of the things I wish we'd done differently is, ironically enough, it's hard coded at the moment. So it's not even something I can change without the programmer coming and helping us is like, if you beat level or wave 25 of a level, you unlock the next level. However, you can keep playing until wave 40, which is when you fully beat a level. So there's like a difference between like you beat the level, but now you've like perfected the level. Well, if you get to level 25 and you die, it says you lose. And I'm like, no, it should say like, congratulations, you did awesome. Congrats, here's the next level. But then at the bottom in like small print, it says unlock new level. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I wish I could adjust that, but like the way it was kind of just designed, it makes it a little more difficult than it should be. But like, that's stuff that we'll be cognizant of next time and learn because again, it's kind of a learning experience, but also it's just like making sure that people, feel more success when they play is something we got to do.
No, I agree with that. You don't want to break them too hard. My last one, but then I'll wrap up. I'm just, as being a creative, being being someone who's into game development, being around game developers, do you have another game or another idea that you have on your brain of
I
like,
have
hey,
another game besides even a
okay,
sequel to SiegeCaster that
okay,
I really want to
that's
do.
what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I have one I really want to do, and it kind of actually comes from the fact I was thinking about my two brother-in-laws, and I'm like trying to think of like what we have in common, and I was like, I like to open Pokemon cards. I'm like, they like to open Pokemon cards. They just don't call it Pokemon. They call it fishing. And I'm like, it's really not that different. You grab a beer, you hang out with your friends, you cast a net or open a pack, and you hope you get something good back in return. But 90% of the time you get jack squat and you lose your bait, you know? And I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, it's really not that different. And I really want to build a really kind of intricate fishing game that's all about like kind of friend mechanics of like how you play together with each other, and also just like some cool unique loot table stuff that I think would make it a very collector friendly game that I think would be really fun, because like that's something that's been in my head for a while and I want to kind of explore it. I keep kind of detailing it out. I've got like a 5-10 page game design doc at this point of just like ideas for it. So it's definitely something I'm chewing on like every day. And I mean, I jokingly called it Redneck Pokemon one time, but I'm like, that would never fly from a, you know, actual brand perspective. But like,
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's just like, it was just something cool that I just realized, I'm like, no, that's something we all have in common. That like, again, it's just kind of a lot of people have their own version of it, you know, whether it's pulling a slot machine or fishing. It's very similar. It's just kind of a dopamine with friends, you know?
I love it. I love it. No, man, that's great. I love that. John, I loved being able to chat with you about and have you on and just be able to have you as a guest. I think it's a lot of I thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. That's our show for today. Thanks to John Laster of John Laster Law, SiegeCaster, maybe a future games, game development and studio. But definitely make sure to check them out. Check out the show notes. If you need legal advice, definitely reach out to him. If you want to play a game, definitely check out his game, especially if you're a gamer. And if anything, I think he's a good follow. So definitely make sure to give him a follow and see if you want to support my show. Definitely make sure to subscribe. Make sure to tell your friends. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.